Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
The answer is that it is possible, for at the end of the millennium, you will lie down on a leaf of a banyan tree, and just like a small baby, you lick the toe of your lotus foot. So, as we said yesterday, Devahuti's illusion is now gone. And Devahuti, now that her illusion is now gone, she is describing in this section the activities of Kapila. Kapila is none else but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And she is amazed how the Lord has taken birth from her womb, her abdomen. And it is explained in the purport that the Supreme Lord has descended in the form of Caitanya Mahaprabhu in order to taste the sweetness of the transcendental mellow. So Caitanya Mahaprabhu is the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 5,000 years ago, the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Lord Sri Krishna, demanding that one should surrender. But the followers, after the disappearance of Lord Krishna from this planet, did not really stick to the original philosophy, and it became necessary for the Lord to appear again in the form of Caitanya Mahaprabhu to teach how devotional service has to be rendered. Caitanya Mahaprabhu is known as Pati Pavan, the most merciful, very merciful even to the most fallen. Rupa Goswami has stated, Nama Mahavadanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate. You are the most merciful incarnation because you are freely distributing this love of God. So Rupa Goswami concluded he was the most merciful. And Caitanya Mahaprabhu descended to teach the living entity how to render devotional service. He firstly taught how devotional service can be rendered. Prabhupada gives a nice example that a teacher when he sees a weak student, he goes and he takes the pencil of the student and he writes A, B, C, D to show the student how to write the different alphabets. But that doesn't mean that the teacher has become the student. So similarly, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, the incarnation of the Supreme Lord, is showing us how devotional service has to be rendered. But that doesn't mean he becomes a conditioned living entity. He in all situations remains the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in this incarnation, along with his associates, he is teaching us how the human form of life can be perfected, how one can render pure devotional service. So Caitanya Mahaprabhu preached this Krishna conscious philosophy. The Mayavadis could never understand Caitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings, and many of them would criticize him for his chanting and dancing and along with his associates. But Caitanya Mahaprabhu taught how just by chanting the names of the Lord, one can realize perfection. Devahuti in this section of the Bhagavatam is finding it impossible to describe the transcendental nature of the Lord and His creation. It is said that even Ananta Sesha, who is an expansion of the Lord, and Ananta Sesha who has thousands of heads and tongues, even he cannot comprehend the transcendental, inconceivable nature of the Supreme Lord. So, Brahmaji, the creator of this universe, also finds it very difficult to comprehend. Brahmaji at a certain point was thinking that he was aware of everything till he went to Dwarka to see Lord Krishna. And the doorman, when he informed the Lord that Brahma had come, Lord Krishna sent back the message, which Brahma is it? And Brahma said, please inform that the four-headed Brahma, the father of the Kumaras, has come to see the Lord. And when Brahma went in to see Krishna, he offered his obeisances, and the Lord said, how can I help you? Is there anything that you need help in? And Brahma said, before I ask you for any help, I want to know as to why did you say which Brahma is it? Are there other Brahmas also? And the Lord said, yes, and he called the different Brahmas from the different universes. And one after another, all the Brahmas started entering into the room. One was a Brahma with 20 heads, some with 100 heads, some with 1,000 heads. And Brahma, when Brahma saw all these different Brahmas in that room, he felt like a mosquito in the midst of elephants. Like a mosquito in the midst of elephants feels totally insignificant because the elephants are so huge. So Brahma felt like a mosquito in the midst of elephants. He saw all these Brahmas come, and then Brahma concluded that it is impossible for him to estimate the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Devahuti also is coming to the same realization that it is impossible for her to estimate the inconceivable nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is so kind that he even lets his devotee become his mother. Like in the Bhagavatam it is stated, that Mother Yasoda had rendered such great service, had rendered such great austerities, that in return Krishna agreed to appear as her son. This is not an ordinary privilege for the Lord to appear as a son. The relationship between the devotee and the Lord is so great that the Lord even agrees to serve the devotee. The Lord, he looks for the opportunity to serve the devotee. So this is the nature of transcendental devotional service. The devotee is competing to serve the Lord, and the Lord is competing to serve the devotee. So therefore Rupa Goswami has said, the devotional service is very rarely awarded. This is one of the characteristics of pure devotional service. That pure devotional service is very rarely awarded. Why? Because when Krishna awards pure devotional service, he agrees to sell himself to the devotee. So the devotees, they desire transcendental pleasure by executing the process of devotional service. Those who are transcendently situated neither lament nor do they hanker, because they are offering everything to Bhoktaram Yagatapusam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. They are offering all types of sacrifices to the Lord who is the enjoyer of everything. So, perfection of human life is realized when one tries to understand his relationship with the Lord. Pursuing the path of sense gratification, or pursuing the activities of the animals, is not the real business of the human life. Just like in someone may give you a check. When you have the check with the amount written on it, you feel very happy. But when the check is deposited in the bank and the check bounces, then you feel very frustrated. You say, oh. So this is exactly what material life is like. It may appear a little attractive initially, but later on, you discover, oh, the check has bounced. Later on you feel, oh, why did I engage in this activity? So, awareness of the body or self-awareness is actually misleading. Just like when you may go out shooting and you have a target, but you may end up shooting at the wrong man. So, being aware of the self means ending up shooting at the wrong man. We're trying to give happiness to the body, but actually we're just giving misery. So, the injunction of the scriptures is that one should take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, as it is also being explained in this purport. By taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, one can obtain real satisfaction. This point was also stated by the Kumaras when they instructed Prithu Maharaj, that by taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, one can derive all comfort. The Ganges water is considered to be very purifying because the Ganges water is emanating from the lotus feet of the Lord. So the devotees, they take shelter of the Supreme Lord. They take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. It is explained that this material ocean is very difficult to cross. There are many sharks in it. It's very difficult to cross over this material ocean. But if some or the other, one takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, then it is possible to cross over this material ocean. So the human life is meant to cross over the material ocean by taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. This was specifically taught by Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Caitanya Mahaprabhu was teaching all his associates that in spiritual life one must be very strict. Caitanya Mahaprabhu did not discriminate against any of the varnas or ashramas. A lot of Caitanya Mahaprabhu's associates were householders. For example, there's a story that Caitanya Mahaprabhu was very pleased with one of his householder disciples, and when he heard that his householder disciple's wife had a child, he voluntarily offered to name the child with an auspicious name. So it's not that Caitanya Mahaprabhu was against householders. And at the same time, when Caitanya Mahaprabhu saw that Chota Haridas, who was celibate, had looked lustily at a girl, he prevented him from associating with him. In fact, the associate of Caitanya Mahaprabhu would very often come and tell Caitanya Mahaprabhu that Haridas is feeling very sad, he's very repentant. But still, Caitanya Mahaprabhu did not forgive him, because he, being in the celibate order, renounced order, should not have misused that order by lustily looking at a woman. So the point is that Caitanya Mahaprabhu showed how all the orders can perfect their life by taking shelter of the process of devotional service. As the Vishnu Purana states, Varnasama Chatavata Purushena Parapu Mam Vishnu Aradate, that regardless of the Varnashram one may belong to, Vishnu must be served. If Vishnu is not served, the whole human life is a complete waste of time. So Caitanya Mahaprabhu taught this. He taught how, regardless of the Varnashram one may belong to, the perfection of life is realized when one executes the process of devotional service. The Mayavadis, however, as we said, could not understand the philosophy correctly, and they also could not understand Caitanya Mahaprabhu's position. The Mayavadis were preaching that Lord Krishna is not free from material contamination because he has descended on this planet. Actually, Caitanya Mahaprabhu explained that just like the sun can never come under the cloud, the clouds are always below the sun. It's not that the sun ever comes below the clouds. So similarly, the Lord, he never comes under the influence of the illusory energy. The clouds are there, but they're always below the sun. As the Bhagavad Gita states, Janma karma chame divyam evam vitapataha takya deham puna janma naitimameti sarojuna. One who understands the transcendental nature of my appearance and disappearance, he frees himself from the cycle of birth and death. So Caitanya Mahaprabhu was the most magnanimous incarnation of the Lord, and he freely distributed this love of God. Caitanya Mahaprabhu, once he met Haridas Thakur, and he was informing Haridas that looking at the condition of these Yavanas, he is feeling very sorry. He is looking at the Yavanas who have no respect for the Brahmanical order, who have no respect for the cows, and looking at this plight, he was feeling very sad. And Haridas Thakur replied that, my dear Lord, I can understand your anxiety, but do not worry. By taking to the chanting of the holy names of Krishna, these yavanas will be saved. Ha Ram, Balikaye, Namavase. By taking to the chanting of the holy names of Krishna, these yavanas can be saved. So, Caitanya Mahaprabhu, by this dialogue with Haridas Thakur, he has shown the concern of the devotee for the conditioned souls. Caitanya Mahaprabhu has shown how the devotees of the Lord and the Lord himself are very concerned when they look at the plight of the yavanas. But the devotees of the Lord take on the position of Haridas. Haridas, when he saw the Lord was very concerned about this, he tried to assure the Lord that do not worry, by chanting these names of Krishna, these yavanas will be saved. So similarly, the devotees of the Lord, they follow in the footsteps of Caitanya Mahaprabhu's mood, and they want to assure the Lord who is in anxiety about the conditioned souls who are trying to misuse this human form of life. They're trying to misuse this human form of life into pursuing the path of the animals. And the devotees, they took on the mood of Caitanya Mahaprabhu's associates. Caitanya Mahaprabhu's associates, all of them, they were all instructed to spread Krishna consciousness everywhere. Jare dakho tahe kaho Krishna upadesh. They were all instructed to spread Krishna consciousness everywhere. So, the devotees, they try to understand the real mood of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. It is a duty of the government to have the path going back to Godhead open. But that is not happening. The government is so concerned that it wants to make sure there are enough highways. In the winter season, the moment the snow falls, they at once send their trucks to clean the snow so people can still drive on these highways and roads. But the government is not concerned about having highways that can lead one back to Godhead. But the devotees of the Lord, they are concerned about this. So even though the government may not do anything to construct highways on the path back to Godhead, the devotees of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, understanding the specific purpose of his descending on this planet, understanding the mood with which he instructed his associates, are very anxious to have highways leading back to the kingdom of God, and that is the process of Krishna consciousness. So the devotees, they are very anxious to distribute Krishna consciousness. They are very anxious to see that Krishna consciousness is broadcasted because this is the only means by which the human being can become happy. If we understand that Krishna is a supreme Lord, to understand the Lord, one doesn't need education, one doesn't need beauty, one doesn't need wealth. Caitanya Mahaprabhu was touring the southern states of India when he went to a temple and he saw that there was a man who had a Bhagavad Gita and he was just weeping. And the Bhagavad Gita was in the front and the man was weeping. And so the sleepy should stand up. What's the point in coming to class if you guys can't be awake? Why don't you go down and sleep? So, Caitanya Mahaprabhu, when Caitanya Mahaprabhu went to this temple, he saw that this Brahman had a Gita in front of him, and the Brahman was just crying, and everybody else in the temple was just laughing, looking at this Brahman. And Caitanya Mahaprabhu went to this Brahman, and he asked him, why is he crying? He said that I was instructed by my spiritual master to read the Bhagavad Gita every day, but I am uneducated, and I am seeing that Krishna is driving Arjuna's chariot, and after seeing that Krishna is driving Arjuna's chariot, I am seeing how merciful this Lord is, that He is even ready to drive the chariot of His devotee. He is ready to serve the devotee, and how merciful and how great the Lord is. And then when Caitanya Mahaprabhu heard the description, he embraced this Brahmana and said, you are the real devotee of the Lord. You are the real devotee of Krishna. So to be a devotee of Krishna, one doesn't need any material qualification. One has to understand that the transcendental Lord is the owner, the proprietor, the creator, the maintainer, and the living entities are meant to serve Him. Being under the illusory energy, we may think that these bodies are meant for enjoyment. But regardless of whether one is in a male body or in a female body, the constitutional position is to serve the Supreme Lord. And this point was exemplified by Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Caitanya Mahaprabhu especially emphasized this point that one must render devotional service in this human form of life. And Caitanya Mahaprabhu, when he met Ramananda Roy, he asked Ramananda Roy, what is the highest perfection in life? Ramananda Roy replied by quoting the fact that following the Varnashram is the highest. Ramananda Roy gave many answers, including that one should offer everything to the Lord, yet proshi, yet deshnasi. But Caitanya Mahaprabhu rejected all of this. But then, Ramananda Roy, quoting from the Bhagavatam, said the perfection of life is to render devotional service to Krishna all the time without deviation. And then Caitanya Mahaprabhu said, yes, this is the real business of human life. This is the highest activity that one can engage in. To render devotional service to the Lord without any interruption. And as the Bhagavatam says, everything else is simply a waste of time. Shrama evahi kevalam. Anything that doesn't relate to devotional service to the Lord, any activity that does not relate to directly helping advance on the path of devotional service, that is simply a waste of time. So the Bhagavatam says, Save punsam paro dharmo yato bhakti adhokshaje. That the supreme occupation for mankind is that by which one can render devotional service to the Lord. And what is the nature of this devotional service? The nature of this devotional service is that it must be completely unmotivated and uninterrupted. That is the nature of pure devotional service to Krishna. It must be unmotivated and uninterrupted. And if devotional service to the Lord is unmotivated and uninterrupted, then it results in genuine love of God. The Bhagavatam propounds the highest religious principles. Therefore it says, Dharma hi apavargasya narto vrataya patapate. That religion should not be utilized for pursuing mature gains. Rather, religion should be utilized for fulfilling the desires of the Lord. That is, that the living entity engage in devotional service. So the Lord's purpose is to bring the living entities on the point of devotional service, and the devotees of the Lord, those who understand the mood of the Lord, those who understand the mission of the Lord, they also work towards just fulfilling the desires of the Lord. The lotus feet of the Lord are the only places of shelter, as Narottam Das Thakur has very beautifully said. In fact, Narottam Das Thakur has said that one who doesn't take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord is simply drinking poison. Manushya janma paya Radha Krishna na bhajya janya shunya bisha kainu. One who has obtained this human form of life, but he is not worshipped Radha and Krishna. He is simply swallowing poison uselessly. Why is he swallowing poison? Because by not utilizing the human form of life to engage in the process of devotional service, one becomes what is known as the killer of the soul. And as the Ishapanishad states, one who is a killer of the soul, he is condemned into the hellish furnace. Andenatama savitaha surya nama te loka. That the asuras, they do not know the purpose of human life. Surya nama te nam te loka andena tamasavritaha tam se preta pika chanti ye ke chatmahano janaha. That the killer of the soul, whoever he may be, is sent into the hellish planet. So, those who are killers of the soul, namely those who do not utilize the human form of life to render devotional service, have to pay a price by entering into the hellish planets. Therefore, Narottam Thakur has very rightly said that not worshipping Radha Krishna in the human form of life is equal to swallowing poison. So what we see in society today is, by and large, the people are just swallowing poison. They're wasting this valuable human form of life. This beautiful body, instead of being utilized for a beautiful ending, it is being utilized for something miserable. As we have explained earlier, mature life means being miserable. Mature life is also always deceiving oneself. It appears to be hopeful, but actually it results in nothing but frustration. One may say that these illicit acts are permitted by the government, so these are not sinful. But the reality is that we have to understand what is permitted by the supreme government, not what is permitted by just the government consisting of mundane people, those who themselves are blind to the purpose of human life. Just like after that, every living entity has to pay for his actions. This is confirmed by Lord Kapila's instructions to Devahuti, how the living entity is transmigrating from one body to another body. Karmana deva naitrena jantu deho papataye sriya pravishudaram pum saureta khanashraya. That the demigods are watching the activities of the different living entities, and after that, the soul enters through the semen of the male into the womb of the female, and he obtains a body based upon his karma. So, based upon the activity that one performs, one obtains a body of that type. So the devotees of the Lord, they are very anxious that this human form of life be perfected by taking to the process of devotional service. They know that except for Krishna consciousness, nothing can satisfy the living entity. Therefore, they are very anxious to see that the karma be good, not that the activity be such which will take one to hellish planets. One may present any amount of arguments, but for the sinful activities that one is committing, one cannot go to the court of Yamaraj and say that I committed this illicit activity because my government had permitted this, or because the province where I resided had permitted this. No. We have to try and understand the laws of the supreme government. And if you understand the laws of the supreme government, and if we follow those laws, then that is the real perfection of human life. So this is what was taught by Caitanya Mahaprabhu, that we have to follow the laws of the supreme government and engage in this process of devotional service. The devotee derives complete shelter by executing the process of devotional service. The characteristic of one who is advancing on the path of devotional service is that he understands that Krishna is the controller of everything, and he depends upon the mercy of the Lord for all situations. Just like when the bull had entered into the kingdom of Maharaj Parikshit said, "Who has caused you this harm? Who has cut your leg?" And the bull refused to reply. So the devotee thinks that whatever situation I am in is due to my own actions. But the Lord is very merciful. He is still engaging me in the process of devotional service. Not that one looks for scapegoats. Not that one is trying to always put the blame on others. So, when we advance in devotional service, the test is, to what extent are we depending on Krishna? To what extent are we depending on the mercy of Krishna? When we understand that Krishna is the ultimate controller, and we live according to his desires, then that is surrender. So a devotee, he's constantly seeing the extent to which he's advancing spiritually. That is not difficult to ascertain. Just like when you're sick, you're always putting the thermometer in your mouth to see how fast the temperature is going down. So similarly, one should see how fast are the different material desires going down. How fast am I becoming increasingly dependent upon the Lord? To what extent do I have faith in the instructions that I am receiving? And when we see that the material desires are going down, then one can see that the material temperature is going down. Devotional service may appear a little difficult because there are so many rules and regulations that one has to follow. But these rules and regulations, they become a burden of love if these rules and regulations are followed just to please the Supreme Lord and the Spiritual Master. If these rules and regulations are followed just to please the Supreme Lord and the Spiritual Master, then these rules and regulations become a burden of love. But sometimes we may notice that someone says it's hard to get up in the morning, it's hard to be awake, it's hard to do the rounds properly, it's hard to do this, it's hard to go on Sankirtan, it's hard to engage in devotional service all the time. If we find these activities to be hard, but at the same time we execute them out of a feeling of love for the Lord and His representative, then this is called a burden of love. And the result of this burden of love is unlimited happiness. Just like Mother Yasoda's burden. Her burden should not be underestimated. She was in constant anxiety that nothing may happen to Krishna. She was in constant anxiety that Krishna may not be harmed by the other demons and his friends. So, this anxiety, however, resulted in pleasure. Material anxiety results in ulcers and diseases, but spiritual anxiety results in unlimited pleasure. So the devotees of the Lord, they are not scared about material anxiety. They are not scared about the inconveniences that they have to go through. They are not scared about the obstacles that they have to face, because these obstacles, burdens are all being faced with the view of pleasing the Lord. So this becomes a burden of love. Similarly, one may be asked to do a service which may be contrary to one's chain of thought. But if we accept that direction as the desire of the Lord, then this is considered to be surrender. Arjuna had so many arguments as to why he should not engage in this battle. But the Lord destroyed all his arguments, told him he's a fool. He should just listen to him. And Arjuna surrendered. And what was the result of that surrender? The result of the surrender was that he became peaceful. The result of the surrender was that he became peaceful. In the 7th verse of the 2nd chapter, Arjuna said, I'm completely confused about my duty. So the confusion is when we are not surrendered. But when one is surrendered to the process of pure devotional service, understanding that the Lord is the ultimate controller, then there's nothing but peace and happiness. This was clearly exemplified by Arjuna. Arjuna was completely confused. He was totally unhappy. He just did not know what he should do. So he was ordered by Krishna, and then he surrendered, and then he became peaceful. So similarly, as long as we try to be independent of the instructions, there is unhappiness, there is confusion. But when we become completely submissive to the instructions, then our position becomes like that of Arjuna. We become very peaceful, we become very joyful, and one who is peaceful and joyful, he doesn't lament or he doesn't hanker. So, at times we meet devotees who are not very peaceful or who are complaining that the devotional service is not being relished, and they also gradually walk out of devotional service. This is all because the principle of surrender is being forgotten. The independent mind is trying to force one not to surrender. Just like Arjuna's mind was trying to force him not to surrender to Krishna. Arjuna utilized a whole chapter of the Bhagavad Gita saying why he should not surrender to Krishna's instruction. But at the moment he surrendered, he became peaceful. The moment the child tries to be independent of the father, the child is always unhappy and anxiety, but the moment he surrenders, he is happy. The moment the citizen leads his life according to the directions of the government, he is peaceful. But when he tries to defy the laws of the government, then he is always ashanta, he is always unpeaceful. So Caitanya Mahaprabhu taught us that the peace of mind, happiness can be realized by executing the process of devotional service. This was Caitanya Mahaprabhu's biggest contribution, establishing that nothing except pure devotional service to Krishna can satisfy one. Krishna can only be understood by the process of pure devotional service. Athasha Krishna namadina bhavet graham indriyahi sebo mukehi jiva do. The Supreme Lord can only be understood by the process of seva. He cannot be understood by one's material senses. So seva means executing the process of pure devotional service, and the best mode of executing the process of pure devotional service was exemplified by Thakur Bhakti Vinod, who said, Manasa deha geha yog kicha mora apilam tuya pade nanda kishora. That, my dear Lord, I place everything that I have at your lotus feet in service to you. And the desire of the devotees, Mama Janmanishware Janma, also Bhakti Aitaditai, to render devotion to the Lord again and again. And Rupa Goswami confirms, Iha yasya hare dasya kha manasa manasagara nekilasu api vasutasu jiva mukta cha uchate. That one who renders pure devotional service with his body, mind and words, now he is living in this material planet, he is to be considered to be liberated. So the devotees of the Lord who are executing devotional service with their thought, mind, body, words, they are to be considered to be liberated because everything has been surrendered to the Lord. So surrender is the key to our happiness. Surrender is the key to our satisfaction. Surrender is the key to our spiritual advancement. Spiritual surrender results in happiness. Spiritual independence results in unhappiness and confusion. So, Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu taught us how one should surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by executing devotional service according to the directions, one can be happy and peaceful. So this is what this Krishna conscious movement is also propagating. So those who are followers of Caitanya Mahaprabhu should understand the mood of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and being in that mood work towards spreading Krishna consciousness freely. Caitanya Mahaprabhu is called Patit Pavana. The devotees of the Lord are also Patit Pavana. They are the most merciful because, following the footsteps of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, they are very anxious to distribute Krishna consciousness to everyone. So that has to be our absorption, that has to be our meditation. How can the propagation of Krishna consciousness be made at a faster pace? If this is our meditation, how can Krishna consciousness be propagated at a faster pace? Then we will be very dear to the Lord. Vedesu durlabham durlabham atma bhakto. Krishna cannot be understood even through the scriptures, but one who executes the process of devotional service, then he can be understood. So, those who execute the process of devotional service, completely surrendering everything to the Lord, and those who are absorbed in the mood of distributing the Lord's mercy, are very dear to the Lord. Just like Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva was feeling very sad for the people of the age of Kali. Thou Vyasadeva was the incarnation of the Lord. Vyasadeva was feeling very sad about the people in the age of Kali, and he was meditating how will the people in this age of Kali be saved. And then Vyasadeva wrote the Vedic literature for people in the age of Kali. So the devotees of Vyasadeva have to be in the same mood of Vyasadeva and meditate how they can save the people in this age of Kali. And Caitanya Mahaprabhu demonstrated that it is only through this process of Krishna consciousness that the people in this age of Kali can be saved. So to summarize, Devahuti is describing the transcendental nature of the Lord. She is describing how the Lord can lie down on a banyan tree just like a baby and also lick the toe of this lotus tree. The Lord is inconceivable, His pastimes are all transcendental, and the Lord descended in the form of Caitanya Mahaprabhu to taste the sweetness of the transcendental mellow in Himself, which is being experienced by Srimati Radharani, the greatest of all devotees. Hare Krishna. The Vancouver Gurukul, Calgary, most probably, if that everything goes well. And in Edmonton also the preaching is going nicely. And in Vancouver, Lakshmanath Prabhu can testify. He said that he never thought it was bubbling with so much activity. It's going very nicely. We have a very good bhakta making teams, about 10 new bhaktas we have. And the best news of all is that Seattle, after being in troubled waters for some time, has now become a very active center again. In fact, we had initiations in Seattle 2 days ago, and there were about 30 local guests on a working day. There are people walking into the door all day. Kripamidi was going to open a downtown preaching center, but I told him there's no need to do that because there's so many people walking right into the temple. You don't even have to go outside. So the temple's doing very nicely, and from this month, October, the 2 devotees out of Seattle who are collecting exclusively for the BBT. So this is a far cry from when it was struggling for survival. Now we have 5 or 6 devotees going on Sankirtan every day in Seattle, and 2 of them are collecting for the book club. We've also formed the Canadian BBT party, as some of you probably know. We've taken devotees from every temple, and few devotees have been designated to collect for the distribution of books. The main purpose in doing this was to ensure that an adequate amount did go for books. So this BBT party is going to run in a very unique way. Yoginath Prabhu, assisted by Jiva Mukta, is going to coordinate it. Yoginath in charge of it, and Jiva Mukta is helping, he's the assistant in charge. The devotees from the different temples whose collection will go to the BBT, their credit will go against the temple that they belong to. That's the Montreal has 4 devotees. So even though it's part of the BBT party, but the scores of the 4 devotees will be credited to the Montreal temple. So the main advantage in this is that a local temple doesn't feel that they're not doing for the book fund. In fact, I spoke to Prabhupada Kripa Maharaj about their experience in Australia with the BBT party, and this was one of the problems they had. It was all centralized, with the result that the local temples got very discouraged. So ours is simultaneously one and different. The devotees are still attached to the local temple, but at the same time the monies go to the BBT. Thus we're starting a newsletter from October 15th. Yoginath, the editor of that, it's going to come out of Edmonton. It's going to be a fortnightly newsletter for devotees of the Canadian Seattle and Northern Western India zone. And this newsletter, I've been thinking of it for about 2 years, but it's finally off the ground now. I went over the whole layout with Yoginath, so he's working on it now. Different devotees should write from the realizations in this newsletter. Prabhupada always wanted devotees to write from their realizations, and this newsletter will provide an outlet to the devotees to write from their realizations how to expand from Kirtan or whatever realizations they may have about Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Rama